And their call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1. And that puts you into queue to talk to us, and we would love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And we'll give Michael just a moment to dial in. And I'll just thank everybody again for your thoughts and prayers. Aria spent the night with us last night. Her mom went to the orthopedic this morning and got a better report than what the ER had told her. She does have a chipped bone in her elbow, but they feel like, it may move, but they want her to actually work her arm as much as she can and wear her soft cast only in the evenings. And so that's a better situation than what the ER had given us. And they had, the ER had said it would take 6 months to heal, and the orthopedic said it should be better in 6 weeks. So we are glad and thankful for that report, for your prayers, and also Gabby's been using the Avicen every day for several weeks because she was developing carpal tunnel in her hands. Excuse me. And we think that the Avicen actually helped her elbow heal quicker too. It's been a couple days, and they did draw some fluid off of it, but she's doing good, and the baby's still on target for the 28th, and so we're excited and busy here. And like I said, we kept Aria last night, so we've had a busy 48 hours too. Michael's with us now, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Delighted, honored that we're back together once again, and yeah, I've heard many reports of people with broken bones, and they go back to the doctor, and they, the doctor's like, what did you do? This is impossible. Wound healing and such, because of the primary thing that it does is delivers oxygen to tissue. So pretty cool. And so, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up? Any questions in the chat room? Any questions from email?
No hands are up, and a hand just went up, and it's Miss Susan.
Awesome.
But before, I'll just say, if you're using the app, our apologies. Something had gone wrong with our online website, doing the worksheet online, and it wasn't printing, and we were trying to fix it, and we messed up the app. So I've been working with India for the last couple of days, and we're hoping that it's not actually the app. It'll walk you through everything, but when you get to the part where you can print a PDF, that's not working. So we are working on that, and hopefully we'll have it back up in a couple of days. So, Susan, you're on the air.
Hi, guys.
Welcome, young lady.
So, good report. I'm so glad to hear about Gabby and baby Lincoln.
Yeah, we're thankful.
What a relief. Yeah. That's really great. So, we have had to block our Michael.
Ouch.
And it turns out that he's calling my daughter's church and complaining to them there. So he's gone completely off his rocker. And in light of the work we did yesterday, I mean, I thought I had all the ducks in a row because I did, the work we did on the radio show, and then afterward, I thought, okay, good, we're all set here. And then he texted one more time saying that he had trusted us and we were totally untrustworthy. And he's just so angry. My son wrote him a very kind note, which helped me settle down and calm down, because I went right back to a level 9 upset. After all, it triggered everything again. My son wrote him a note somewhat to the effect of, look, we had a good and reasonable time. You told me lots of stories about your life, and you told jokes, and we got along, and let's just relax, calm down. I really liked what I saw there, a beautiful place to live and a nice place for the dog to walk. And I think I would have been very happy there if I were by myself. And I wonder if you can just let things settle down. You're terribly upset, and I'm wishing you well. You're our friend. It was the sweetest letter. And he said, I know you've been emailing back and forth with my parents, and I don't know the contents of that. He knew basically that Michael was upset, but he hadn't read the emails. He said, I want to keep it that way. I think this is just, we've gotten very upset about things, and let's just calm down and everything will be okay. But then it was after that Michael sent this. It was last night at about 9, and we go to bed early enough that I didn't get it till this morning.
Right.
But so I called my daughter, and I just said, well, what are you hearing? And I want to call the administration and ask them, how he is with them. Are we just getting punished, but he's actually doing all right? She said, Mom, don't do anything. Block him. She's on a commission for homelessness down there, and she said, we see this sort of thing. That's why we need organizations to help people with homelessness, because one-on-one, you opened your house, and you really set yourself up. And she kind of blasted me. She said, you have no boundaries, Mom. And I was thinking, wait 1 minute. I mean, he'd been, is that true? I don't think that's true either. He'd been around the neighborhood. Another neighbor had taken him in for 6 weeks and asked him to leave after 6 weeks. And Michael did say a few nasty things about this guy, was angry at him for getting him out of there. But I thought, well, he's just feeling rejected and so forth. And I sort of wrote it off. I should have been smarter about that, because if he's going to trash somebody who takes care of him, then he's probably going to trash us. And my daughter said, Mom, you just can't keep opening your house to people. You can't keep doing that. And I'm thinking, how do you be like Jesus if you can't be like Jesus? But Jesus didn't have a house, and we went through all that about how he never offered to have anybody live with him because he was living with other people, I guess. But anyway, so it's been a total roller coaster. And I think, why is this happening to me again? What is this? And I'm right where I was before, I guess.
Well, if you recognize that you went right up to a level 9, then once again, notice that most of the conversation is about the external happenings rather than the internal, and what you want to shift to, what the opportunity is. How many times have you heard me say it? The purpose of life is to kick us in limitation. The purpose of life is to show us exactly what we're holding on to, and life is relentless.
Yeah.
It's what happens. And if someone has a reaction, such as Michael has had, and then I have a reaction to their reaction, then I have work to do.
Absolutely.
And my offer would be the best place you could go would be into, okay, so here's my next worksheet. When they said to Yeshua, I think it was Peter that said, how many darn worksheets do we have to do? How many times do I have to forgive as to my brother? Is 7 times enough? And in Aramaic, we're told he said 70 times 7, but the Aramaic, I understand, is more, says 77 times 70, which I would interpret not as a literal number, but I'm going to do an infinite amount of work until I'm finished with my unconscious dynamics. And notice that your daughter has, this stuff is obviously being pointed at your daughter, and she has a different reality than you, which, if there's work for her to do, she could do. You have a different reality, and, I have a different reality. And anyone looking at a situation, if the perceptual mind is serving up something based in pain, then it's my opportunity to pretend that the cause is outside of me, or to go into a conversation with myself. I remember, go back to that Carl Jung quote, until the unconscious becomes conscious. And yesterday, you know, for me, it always amazes me the instant that people cancel that goal and listen what comes. And where you went with that yesterday, I thought was extremely powerful. And maybe there's another layer of that one to go through. If you look at, you know, maybe the circumstance, the worksheet now looks like, you know, the object of attention is Michael and calling your daughter, and what do you want from him? In that situation, different goal. And when you cancel that, collapse that construct that came up at a level 9, then listen, there's going to be a different probably message related to your healing involved.
Yeah, there are two parts of that. I agree with you, and I do intend to take responsibility for that, going from 0 to 9 right away again. But when my daughter said, "Mom, his demons are out. You didn't do anything wrong. You sent him down. He knew for months that you had applications in for him in a lot of different places. He was willing to get into the truck." But she said, "You've got to block him." And as soon as she said that, I thought, oh, good, I'll be safe then. I felt as if I was just getting an attack that I had no defenses to.
Right.
I don't understand how, because I do feel so much better that I don't have to get those texts anymore. I know what he's thinking, and he'll keep thinking that. But that's not so upsetting as hearing it. What's the matter with me? I mean, I've missed something.
Nothing's the matter with you. You're one of us humans. And once again, notice how little you acknowledge yourself. To me, you went the country mile 10 times over for that man. In what you gave him, what you did for him. And, you know, you could have just as easily said, you know, okay, we've had enough now. It's time for you to go back to the street. I think, and notice how little you acknowledge yourself for what you've done.
Oh, thanks for that, Michael. We did do a lot for him, and I know we did good things for him. The thing was we were getting along. We hugged each other goodbye. He said, "I love you guys," and I know he uses that. He also manipulates people. In fact, one of his emails was, "I loved you." And I'm saying, "I loved you, but I don't love you anymore because you did this." I mean, he does what he does. And I do see that we did a good thing. And I was going to say something. Oh, yeah. We had a very tenuous working relationship that was fragile, but it was going right. And he did stuff for us around the house, and whenever he did, I would say, "Oh, I noticed that you watered the gardens," or "I noticed that you mowed," and we have this rickety little hand mower. And he would push it around, and it'd look a lot better, and I would thank him. And he told me once, "I love it when you thank me." And I thought, you've been not thanked much, I guess. So I would really make sure we acknowledged we had a good thing going. But as soon as we got down there, he said, "I'm going to be homeless. I'm losing everything." So he was angry. And then you sent him something, which I want to say again, that was an extreme stirring of the pot in my thought. You were not wrong in what you thought, but you and he didn't have a contract to work together. You weren't working together. He was getting, it's like you and I ganged up on him. And boy, when that happened, it escalated to absolutely a firestorm. And I'm not saying it wouldn't have been anyway. It probably would have been, but it kind of accelerated the whole process of his thinking, "Oh, you and he talked about me behind my back, and you're a liar," he called me. Because I said, "I didn't say you were playing the victim." but he knew you and I had talked, so he said, well, you're a liar because Michael and you talked. And then he went on and on about something like, I bet you're paying him thousands of dollars. I thought, what is that about?
Well, the stress is up and the chips are down. And, perhaps you're not privy to the fact that he actually had communicated with me recently about wanting to know. Remember, at one point I offered him a band that we had. And he had communicated to me, I'm not even sure, I'd have to look back at my texts, and asked if that band was still available. And we had a conversation back then. And so, that was part of the impetus for me to, when I heard what he was throwing at you, that was part of my impetus to invite him to step into appreciation, because he was in so much pain, and recognize that he's the cause of his own pain. And, that's not an easy pill for people to swallow. And sooner or later, anybody who wants to get out of pain has to swallow that pill. Right.
And this is where I could be wrong about this, but it was too much, too high voltage, too soon, because you hadn't been working with him. I should put it this way. If you had sent me the communication and said, should I send this to him, I would have said, oh, definitely not. Don't do it. He won't hear that in anything but a destructive way. It'll just make matters worse. Now, maybe ultimately you seem to have a trust in him that he's going to grab hold because you've challenged him. I don't have that feeling about him. He seems much too unwilling to work and perhaps too fragile ever to look. And that may be my mistake. So, it just accelerated everything. And I don't know what you want to say to that, but I'm just telling you what I thought.
Well, I'll join you in holding the space.
Yeah, when I write a letter, a thundergram, or anything in between a loving letter and a thundergram, most of the time, and not always, but most, I run it in front of Tim Bingham. I read it to Tim Bingham, and he'll say, oh, don't send that. And usually he's right. So, anyway, I'm sorry it all happened that way. I feel as if, in a way, we've really lost the ability to connect in any positive way with him, and that probably would have happened anyway. But it really guaranteed it this time. And there's all
I'll
that.
hold the space that's not necessarily anything permanent either. Obviously, many of his goals have been violated by you, by me, by the people in Florida, by the 18th floor. That violates his goals. So, his stress is up, and now we know what his power person story is, and we can do the work around what that brings up in us and hold the space for him to move through his power person dynamics rather than go on destroying himself with them.
I think what you're saying is what my daughter calls demons. She doesn't call it power person, but she said, Mom, all his demons are up because you stopped playing the game with him. You stopped giving him a comfortable place to stay and having it all work out nicely for him. You took those things away, and so his demons are out in force. Nobody's playing the game with him.
Well, I would agree with that, except for one thing.
What?
And that one thing would be I don't think you took anything away from him. I think you gave him something much better. However, his goals have been violated, and when someone's goals are violated, what the mind does is it substitutes the content of the mind for the actuality of the moment.
Yeah.
And so So my take is you didn't take anything from him. And yes, and remember from our work with when we did the series on the Kvor's manuscript in the Aramaic, and your daughter's absolutely right. In Aramaic, the word demon is a construct of the mind based in thought disorders projected, into whoever or whatever happens to be going on. That's, sadly, the Greeks came along and stole that definition and made it into these horrible external creatures, which, of course, comport very well with being a member of the one world universal religion of blame,
right.
where we can always
Absolutely.
find somebody else to blame for our demons. Oh, the demons, the devil made me do it. And going back to owning, no, the demon that I have to deal with is the demon inside of me, which is my own mental construct and my own thought disorder.
Yeah.
And life will be relentless at resonating our demons. That's the, while we're in a state of destroying ourselves, the purpose of life, my take would be the purpose of life is singular, and that is to kick us right square where we need to look and deal with ourselves and come out of blame and own our demons, which is the first step to getting rid of them.
Yeah. Well,
so joining you and holding the space for him and doing the clearing up of the next level of that level 9 stuff that he's given you the gift of bringing up. And that I cooperated with and helped him do.
Yeah. If I hadn't blocked him, he would invite me to return, to answer him, and I would try to defend myself. I don't have to defend myself anymore. And one other thing...
There's nothing for you to defend. That line in the Course in Miracles, in my defenselessness.
Right. Well, Michael, I've talked about this before. This is one of the things that I still wake up in the night sometimes and remember that I did this. And I've told you about this. How when my father would be, fishing on the shore of the Cape where we used to stay when I was a child, he'd throw dogfish, catfish, and stingrays up onto the beach because he had reeled them in and he didn't want them. Rather than unhook them and throw them back, he would throw them up onto the beach, and we would stone them to death. My brother and my sister and I, in various configurations, and we probably did it 5 or 6 times, we would stone them to death. And that somehow came into asking to be shown. That's when it came up in the subsequent worksheet.
Right.
Asked to be shown. So I have done my Michaels. I did it to those innocent fish. And I do feel as if I am innocent, and Tim Bingham is innocent in this. Our intentions were good.
Yeah.
But he is stoning us. What do you do with that? Because I did that.
What you do is, number one, you enact pardoning towards self. It sounds like you're still carrying a reality call or thought disorders based in guilt for wrongdoing there, that this comes into this whole equation. And that may, remember, let's use this as an example. It's a perfect one where Carl Jung says, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. So if I hold a reality in my mind that I'm guilty for having done something terrible like that, and I don't forgive that, remove that from my structure, then it remains in me as a literal energy pattern that's continuously, literally, by the fact that you can think about something means there's an energy in you about it. And one of the attributes of energy is when it moves, it creates a wave, a literal, measurable energy wave. So there's always a call there as long as that energy's there. And this is how that statement that Carl Jung applies, there's always a call there. Is there anybody that can find an excuse to make me guilty? And here he is responding to that call. So what
Okay.
Yeshua's forgiveness would look like, okay, so now this thing comes up around this thing that I still judge myself for with these fish. So one, am I willing to pardon myself? Can I say, you know, I didn't know any better, or I was in a state of mind that it was not a state of mind I will ever choose again, whatever the dynamic was. Can I pardon myself? Can I let myself off the hook? And now am I going to apply forgiveness to this guilt that I feel for this thing that I've done? Once I cancel the key goal in that one, and that memory is allowed to surface, and I bring it forward in the presence of love, I'm freed from it. Now that energy no longer goes out from me, and I don't draw somebody in to play that dynamic out with me. But underlying every, and you know, to me this is a powerful example of how deep our creative capacity goes. You know, when the Creator says, ask and you receive, the Creator doesn't say ask for wonderful stuff, ask for good stuff, ask for sweet stuff. The Creator just says ask. And we ask by holding an energy within our minds, conscious or unconscious. And so, again, for me, this would be the chance to come back. Oh, so this memory has surfaced again of what I did, and maybe this worksheet involves your siblings that were involved in doing that, maybe even Dad. You know, maybe there's a dynamic that you haven't dealt with yet of that child's mind looking at Dad and Dad modeling being willing to destroy this life that's innocent.
I thought of that
might be another worksheet.
Yeah, I thought, why didn't he unhook the fish and throw it back? Why did he, I mean, out of his peripheral vision, if not directly, consciously knowing what we were doing, why did he allow that? He was way down the beach, but he could see us. I mean, it was the distance of him tossing the fish. How far is that?
Yeah.
You know, not far. And so what happened? Who was that allowed that? So I've been wondering about that, too. But what you said about the energy, yeah.
That's the next worksheet. So I'd be doing a worksheet on Dad in that regard. Like what was going on in him that he would allow us to do that, or what was going on in him that he didn't have more respect for those fish that he caught them to just put them back so they could live.
That's true. My dad
and again,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say he was the most gentle, loving man. So this is a complete, what do you do with that thing?
Well, you ask, you put his name in the number 1C in the worksheet, and you start looking, and maybe, you know, when you cancel the goal for him to have maybe more respect for life, maybe what comes up is the memory of how, you know, his father and grandfather worked on fishing boats, and that's all they could do was, you know, with the demand they had and the pressure they were under was just, you know, if it gets in the way, destroy it. And that might be the memory that comes up, and now you're freed of it. I don't know what it looks like. I'm just using that as a possible example, and that's how intergenerational dynamics work, and why those things need to be surfaced, elsewise they remain as a creative force within our lives. Or I should say more directly, because it wouldn't be the creative force, but they remain a directive for the creative force in our lives.
Yeah. What you said about if you have that in your system and it hasn't been cleared or whatever, forgiven, it can be reactivated. You didn't use that word, but I think that's what you meant, right?
That's it, yeah. When it's resonated, that's it exactly. It's going to bring it back to awareness. And you look at the scriptures, you look at the scriptures before Yeshua shows up, and they talk about the unconscious, or they call it the heart, the mind of man. And they talk about it as being wicked. Who could ever understand it? Who could ever figure it out? Nobody. But you can forgive it. And that's essentially the question they were asking in the scriptures before Yeshua came along with and taught them forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Who could ever figure out the wickedness of their own hearts? That was the word that the scriptures used to describe the unconscious. And nobody could.
Right.
You remember we talked about in the codependence work, the number one pseudo-solution. I could just figure this out. And they were trying to figure it out. And he came along, gave an answer. You're not going to figure it out, but you can apply forgiveness to it and remove the energetic dynamic literally from your bloodline. Because when you get generations and generations and generations, you think about the atrocities that have gone on the earth. This whole circumstance has happened with Michael. To bring up these deep, painful dynamics, both in him and you, to bring those things up, and what kind of generational patterns? They've come up pretty gently. Maybe 3 generations ago, a piece of this dynamic was somebody had their throat slit over the behavior that they did. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff when the scriptures were talking about, they're starting to comprehend the unconscious or at least get an idea of it. And then they're like, who could ever figure it out? Who could ever? It's so full of, I think the words in the scriptures are ravenous and wickedness, i.e., energetic patterns that are off the mark that keep playing out generation after generation.
Mm.
So I'd hold the space for you to do that worksheet on Dad.
Yeah, okay.
And see what in the presence of connected love comes forward when you identify, precisely what that goal is for you and collapse that question, recognizing how gentle Dad was and, maybe this was just an arena, who knows what his power person dynamic, if they were brought up and born around the water, who knows what the power person dynamic was just an unconscious reaction that never even came to conscious awareness for him. I don't know. I could easily, what you say about him as a gentle man, I could easily see that this could be, the day that 3-year-old Dad tried to take that fish that Dad had thrown up on the beach and get it out back in the water and rescue it, and Dad going into a fit of rage and beating on him. I could imagine something like that. And so power person dynamic installed the rest of his life. That's the behavior that happens.
So I guess I'm taking this too literally. I do know that his parents were school teachers, and his dad was the principal of a school. I don't think they lived anywhere near the water. They were inland in Massachusetts. So I don't think I would ever know. But you're saying the healing could happen anyway, even if I don't have the information. You said that before.
Well, the healing can happen anyway. There are 2 levels on which it can be processed. It is not necessarily processed cognitively, but look at yesterday when you canceled that goal, the information that you got, and it did become cognitive. It's not necessary for it to, if I can just open the energy and allow the unconscious energy to move in the presence of love, healing's going to happen. The processing is going to take place. So if you get down to, the precise goal that you have today for your dad in that situation, or maybe it's the worksheet that the first time you went and did that with your siblings doing it, somebody modeled it and, you all just got on the bandwagon and did it. When you get down to the exact goal and you cancel it and you listen, you might know exactly what the dynamic was for your dad. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but my take would be 2 actions to be done in this circumstance. One is to apply pardoning to yourself, to let yourself off the hook for this unconscious action, which in today's mind you wouldn't do in a million years.
Yeah.
Would that be correct?
Yeah. Oh, I can certainly say that.
So really actively pardon yourself and then go into the forgiveness work with the way all of these things tie together. There might be a worksheet or 2 when I, tap into the energy of the conversation with your daughter and your daughter saying, oh, you need to, you have no boundaries and cut them off, there might be some worksheet around accusation to be done where your daughter's the object of attention. What did that resonate for you?
Having no boundaries?
Just that was one of the things that she spoke about that she had said to you.
Right.
And there was some energy with that. So that would be another aspect of what work could be done around this whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, boy. Well, that leads to the question I wanted to ask you at the end of yesterday. I had a spiritual director when I was years ago, a woman in my parish about my age who was addicted to cigarette smoking and trying to give up smoking. And so she and I would compare notes because I was in AA for relationship addiction, getting crushes on people. And she said, oh, I used to do that until I realized it was based on hatred. And I'd forgotten that, but I found it in my journals. I've been looking through old papers. And I thought, is that so? Michael, I don't know what to do with what she said. Is that true? I mean, is that always true? I'm just looking at it and thinking, that doesn't ring any bells with me. Am I missing something really big here?
No, it sounds like, if it's not resonating to you, then I'd say, there's an interesting piece of information that was true for her. And I know that, you've heard me talk before in our Healing Through Relationship workshop, where most relationships today are based in matching bags of garbage. And they're called love relationships. And they are based in hatred, unresolved, unconscious hatred. Yes. A lot of them are. And that doesn't mean it applies to you. And when you go to that, and there's no energy in it for you, I think it's reasonable just say, so I can let that go. Notice that when you went to the thing with Dad, there was some energy there for you. That's your work, and it sounds like you got a clear signal that that's not, going back and looking at that again and going, that doesn't resonate anything for me, then I'd say that you're free in that arena.
That's good, because I know what you mean about the grab. You can sense when something is true. Like, one reason I think Michael was so upset when you called him playing the victim is because that's what he does. And so that's a hard truth to hear. He wouldn't like that. He would fight, and that's what he did. But again, remember John the Baptist was defined in the ancient scriptures as the forerunner of the Christ. Say again? Well, he was defined as the forerunner of the Christ and the raving maniac in the desert. The desert is a code word for the unconscious. Everybody who wants to open to what was called the mind of Christ in them is going to have to find the person who's going to resonate into their space, the person who can show them the raving maniac in themselves, the hate, the fear, the rage, the guilt, the pain that is normally projected. They're going to have to meet someone who shows it to them directly. Now, and you've heard me say that, remember that John did that for the king and the queen, and the king didn't seem all that disturbed about it, but the queen had his head taken off. Because he had not learned, and the two skills that you've heard me kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's really true. If you're going to play the role of John the Baptist and bring somebody's stuff up like that, you really need to know when to duck and when to hold the mirror up so people can realize it's their own. And some people, I've been doing that for a half a century, and some people willingly go, oh, yeah, I got it, and some people still puke on me. That's okay. So you said it to Michael, and he puked on me. That's what happened.
Well, I'll apologize for my role in that as far as you're concerned, but I think Michael needs to be confronted with some truth rather than people being, like with the alcoholic, being enablers that, if he goes into his stuff, then everybody obeys. That's how he gets to keep his enablers going.
Oh, yeah. Agree. No, you were definitely not wrong to point the finger right there. I mean, that was, Jeannie picked up on it right at the beginning when he first started trying to work with us. He resisted on every step, and Jeannie texted me and said, I'm having to do deep breathing. I thought, yeah, that's right. It's going to be tough, this one. So.
And,
yeah,
you know, the next layer is up, so I'll join you in holding the space, because as everything that he resonates in others, you or me or anyone else, your daughter included, each of us who does our work, again, weakens the tendency toward that unconsciousness to run him as well, because it's a back and forth loop. You know, it isn't just that I send out this resonating message and resonate something in somebody else, because then what that resonates in them then takes me the next level. I mean, watch the movie, what was the name of it? War of the Roses.
Oh,
and watch how one of them resonates the other, and you can just, it's like if you've ever been in electronics class where you were trained about a feedback loop. You know, the microphone, you speak into the microphone, the sound comes out of the speakers, goes back into the microphone, comes out the speakers, and it just goes crazy and screeches. And that's the same kind of feedback loop happens between people in relationships. We don't hear it with our eyes, so most people pretty much ignore it, but it's exactly the same process.
Yeah.
So breathing with you on both your behalf and Michael's behalf.
Yeah, I like the idea that if I do my work on this, I'll help him, because I have no way of having any one-on-one with him from now on. So.
And I'd hold the space, rather than buying that as an absolute, I'd hold the space that, yep, his stuff is up, and when his stuff quiets down, there'll be other conversations, or at least the possibility.
I hope so, because he didn't have any friends, and he told me he had a sister and an ex-wife, and the ex-wife lives right near Tim and me, but I don't know who she is. He wouldn't tell me. He wanted nothing to do with them, absolutely nothing. They had done him wrong, and yeah, it is. And so we're the next one. That's his life
story, and at this moment, you're on the list.
Yeah, definitely.
And so am I. You know, when you hold somebody in denial accountable, and they're unwilling to go along with being accountable, they will go to every imaginable range of behaviors. I mean, without mentioning any names, if we look at it in the political realm today,
right,
the exact same thing is playing out in the political realm. Don't hold me accountable, or else, and you know, I'll kill you. I mean, that's the kind of energy that causes wars.
Yep. Right. Oh, Michael, this has been the second almost full hour that you've dealt with Sue Bingham and her stuff. Thank you. I hope there's nobody waiting on the line.
Well, I'm sure that everyone who's listening, who's doing their work, we're really getting down to some subtle principle dynamics that I hope is serving everybody who's listening.
I hope, yeah.
Because that's the objective of the whole process. And you know, you're not in this alone.
Right.
And I admire your courage for going for it.
Well, thanks a lot, as usual.
All right, well, any other thoughts at this moment?
No, this is great. Thank you.
All right, holding you in a blessing. And Michael as well. All right,
Thanks.
Take care.
Good. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, we're down to about 15 minutes, so if you're out there in listener land, let's have another conversation. If you're on one of the stations where we can't... Oh, go for it.
We have a hand up, but we also have a question in the chat room. And in the chat room it says, what does hell mean in Aramaic? certain religions use this as a way to create fear if you do wrong that you're going to go to hell. I'm just curious what the Aramaic meaning is.
Yeah, if you look up the word Gehenna, the Aramaic word Gehenna, and the Gehenna was a word that described actually an area outside of Jerusalem that's a very wealthy, I understand there are beautiful condos on this land now, but back in ancient times, this Gehenna was quite literally, it was called the fiery place, and it was like the local garbage dump. And it's where trash was taken, it's where trash was burned. People who could not afford a burial plot, the poor, their bodies would be cremated there. And so, they used to use this as a threat with little kids. If you don't behave, I'll take you to the Gehenna. And that fear trip worked pretty well, so they created one for big people, which, literally it's based on the metaphor of what that actual property was back several thousand years ago, the fiery place. So in the name of a man who at least 15 times in his life and teaching said, fear not, be careful of anybody that you find who's going to try and terrorize you with fear of hell in the name and pretending that they've got anything to do with the teachings of Yeshua, because they don't know what they're talking about. And that would probably resonate some things in a few people to hear that, but that would be my offering. And yes, many people live in hell continuously. We've just heard a description of a man who's living in his own hell, and the hells are of our own creating. And in exactly the same way, you listen to Yeshua, and people talk about, oh, do you know that when you die, whether or not you're going to go to heaven? Well, Yeshua said, if somebody tells you that heaven is here, there, or over there, believe them not, for it is here, it is now, it is within you. So the kingdom of heaven, properly translated from Aramaic, would be the community of love. The kingdom of hell would be the place where your thinking and your tongue are acidic. Literally, hostility and fear create literal acid conditions in tissue, and acid burns. And, each person chooses their own either heaven or hell. And when we start to recognize that rather than thinking of it as a place, we'll be in harmony with Yeshua and what he was trying to teach 2,000 years ago, but a lot of people still live in denial of and don't really want to take that level of responsibility. I mean, if you really take the responsibility for your own pain and choose to work through it, then you're going to get to look at every generational pattern that's never been resolved in your bloodline and ultimately clean it up. And those who choose not to get to create the condition of hell in themselves in the Aramaic sense. So that would be my offering there. And you got a hand up?
Yes, I do. And I believe it's Miss Celinda, 541. You're on the air.
Good morning. I mean, it's morning here.
Welcome, young lady. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you. I'll take any young compliment I can get. I want to quell or release Susan from any guilt about spending time on the radio show, because I have been surfing these past 2 days on the work that you two have been doing together. And I don't have time today, but because of the show cutting us off. But I would like to do a worksheet with you, Michael, maybe tomorrow on I took the Susan Sisters Road to Survival. And I would like to do an underbelly worksheet, you might say, in relation to my hopelessness, helplessness, and I can't do anything right, so I won't do anything at all. so I would love to do that tomorrow with you, kind of surfing off of her worksheet.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Let's plan right at the beginning of the show to get on, and let's jump into that worksheet tomorrow.
Right, and because your worksheet with her yesterday really opened my eyes and gave me more insight to Larissa, my daughter, and why she was so afraid to even tell me anything and withheld. And I suspect there's some of her past with her stepdad that she's not revealing, that I didn't have any clue about. And she only told me bits and snips. And Marshall is Chinese, and he admitted in a conversation that we had just recently, because he married a sweetheart, an ex-Methodist minister lady that I think has probably had a mellowing influence on him, that he thought he was doing right because that's what Chinese fathers did. And of course the Chinese patriarchal society had total disdain for women and still do in many situations. And so, there's just a lot there now that I understand why she was so afraid, because I turned into a raging monster and did the same behaviors, because that was what I was taught by my mother, that my mother did to me, and probably her mother to her, and on up the line. And so I think that would be a very helpful worksheet. Also, what Susan mentioned about Jeannie being aware from the very beginning about her Michael, and what Jeannie, you have shared about discovering that your father was also a power person dynamic. And I have come to realize that I have two power people, my mother and my father. And both of those energies reside within myself. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fascinating what we uncover. I'm pretty excited about doing this with you.
Well, awesome. Well, and also in many cases, in the way this culture treats women, unfortunately, the kind of situation that you're talking about, and for Jeannie, the kind of situation that she was in when she left home at 16 and got married, is that those same three dynamics come into play in a marriage, and so the spouse becomes a power person as well. So all of those dynamics are things that need to sooner or later be surfaced and be resolved in order to get out of our own personal hells.
Yes, and that I have become aware of very definitely in my marital relationships. And so I'm working on those. I'm dancing as fast as I can and being 100% responsible for my co-creative part in whatever comes into my life. So it's like the way of mastery.
That's a nice piece of work.
Yeah, it's coming together, and I'm choosing Pierre Pradervan's Blessings work, and
right.
Louise Hay, because and I have a couple other things I'd like to share. I believe that happened a couple weeks ago, and just recently with Bob from Australia. You were having a conversation with Dusty. I want to say these now because I'll forget them again. And he was talking something about outcome. I don't remember the context, but I just had to share this for Dusty, that when I started practicing giving up my outcomes that I demanded, in other words, another form for me of letting go of the goal, and just let whatever fell out of the sky happen, that I'm getting much better. I'm letting go a lot more. So I wanted to share that for him. Cut that ribbon.
Well, let me just throw in a thought before you move on from that.
Sure.
That the objective of canceling the goal and doing the forgiveness is not that we then just accept whatever falls out of the sky. It doesn't mean we can't reestablish the goal. It doesn't mean we can't work toward a different outcome. It just means that as long as the outcome resonates some form of hostility or fear in me, then that's my opportunity to free myself from that and go right back to work with, gee, if I want to change this result, then I'm going to change this result. But doing it from a space of conscious, active, present love, rather than doing it from a place of hostility or fear and the non-being self.
And I think that's somehow linked with my definition of outcome, is that my demands and my judgments, which create my goal, and it being out there, it can be on me, myself too, but it's some sort of outcome that I demand life deliver in a certain way. And I agree with you 100% on what you said. It's like I'm doing my very best to do this consciously and fully. So thank you for balancing that, because I think that was important to say too for those listening. The second thing is for Bob specifically.
Before you go into
yes.
Just 1 second before you go into that second thing, if you would, I just want to put an acknowledgement in here and acknowledge you for the work that you've done and the shift I hear in you from the early days of starting to do this work when the resistance was through the roof, and the willingness that you had to go, oh, here I am, my stuff, okay. I mean, that's exactly the kind of shift that all of us need to make each time something comes up, and I just acknowledge you for doing that. That's pretty profound.
And it's like I think I said once on Dr. Tim's show, and I'll share it with you, is I'm really honoring my mind, and I'm honoring how individually different every one of us are. And I never know when I'm going down a white rabbit hole and it's a dead end, bridge out, or when I'm going down that rabbit hole and voila, there's the portal to the Christ mind. And so I honor that, and I just watch it, and I look, and my resistance, I'm honoring my resistance now, and I'm saying, okay, Holy Spirit, Mama Ruha, that's what I call her, Mama Ruha, the heart God within me.
I like that, and Mama Ruha. Yeah, cool.
I love it, because that's the heart God. I mean, Holy Spirit is from the heart. The Christ mind is from the head. And you talk about alignment. And that heart and that head, it's like a marriage. That I got out from that little Ho'oponopono book I shared with you by, I forget the gentleman's name, a Tahitian gentleman, the smallest Ho'oponopono book out there. And he said that. He said if the mother and the father are not connected, the child can't be, can't get any proper direction, can't have any guidance. And then it goes willy-nilly, as Carolyn May says in her Anatomy of Spirit. And then where does the child go? I mean, you've got a recalcitrant child on your hand. They're off somewhere doing whatever, because they don't have any respect for Mama and Daddy on some level of themselves. And that was me. I was scared to death of my mother, and I felt abandoned by my father. And, there you go. It's just, we all have to be in alignment, all those parts of ourselves. And I appreciate what you said about that, too. So thank you for that acknowledgement. We're all really, really hungry to just be acknowledged and allowed and accepted by each other. Yeah, and that's sweet. That's rain on parched soil, sir.
Yeah, well, just holding hands and walking each other home.
That's it. Blessings. And now may I do we have time for my little...
Please, go for it, yes.
Okay. Well, this is for dear Bob in Australia, and feel free to chat him about it if you like. I just intuitively felt that Louise Hay in her Heal Your Body would be a wonderful adjunct for him, because she has served me so well. It took me about 40 years to really grok her. So when she says, I now release the, the unconscious patterns, I now release something of patterns, habitual patterns of consciousness in my mind that have created these diseases, the habitual patterns of consciousness. And I went, whoa, I'm now beginning to understand what she's talking about. And then you're talking about what it does to our cellular structure, and what Dr. Tim is reading in The Way of Mastery about what that means for your cellular structure when you judge and demand and refuse to forgive. You know, it's just like, whoa, this is all coming together. And I'm sure my brain cells are exploding, because there must be infinite actualities more to come. So, and I know I'm sitting here.
How about if we use the word that relates to heaven in Aramaic, that expansion, rather than exploding them, maybe expanding?
Oh, yes, the expanding. Thank you. That comes from The Way of Mastery, too, and other sources. Yeah, the expanding. I love that. And it's just like, and I kind of know I'm in a little resting phase. I'm in my sandbox, and I'm just having fun with these discoveries and setting up these little castles for myself. And I know there's going to be another challenge down the road. But right now, I'm just having fun.
All right, dear, holding the space for you.
So, okay, and so I guess that's it. I would highly encourage him to get that book and look at every symptom that he has and see if it resonates, because she says if it doesn't resonate for you, just sit for a while, and what is true for you will show up. Yeah.
Yep. Go for it.
So thank you.
All right, young lady.
Thank you. Love you all.
All right. We'll look forward to starting